The morning sun peeked through the windows of the acoustic bean, casting warm shadows across the wooden floors. Maya stood behind the counter, her fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm on the smooth surface as she waited for the first customers of the day. At 26, she had mastered the art of crafting perfect lattes and managing the morning rush, but her heart beat to a different rhythm, one that stayed hidden in the worn notebook tucked beneath the register. The familiar bell chimed as regulars started trickling in. "The usual, please," called out Mr. Kumar, a kind-faced teacher who always arrived precisely at 7:15. Maya had his order ready before he reached the counter, a strong chai latte with just a hint of cardamom. As she handed him the steaming cup, she caught herself humming a melody that had been playing in her head since dawn. The cafe held a special kind of magic in these early hours. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans mingled with the buttery scent of croissants warming in the oven. Maya moved with practiced ease between the espresso machine and the display case, but her mind wandered to the lyrics she'd scribbled down during her break yesterday. "You're humming that tune again," observed Aunt Rose, the cafe's owner, though she wasn't really Maya's aunt. Everyone just called her that. The elderly woman had a way of appearing silently, like a gentle ghost watching over her beloved cafe. "It's different from the others." New song. Maya felt her cheeks warm. "Just something that came to me while I was cleaning up last night." She busied herself with wiping down the already spotless counter, trying to hide her embarrassment. The truth was, she had stayed up until 2 a.m. working on that melody, her fingers dancing over the keys of her second-hand keyboard in her tiny apartment. The morning rush picked up, bringing in the usual crowd of office workers and college students. Maya seamlessly switched between taking orders, making drinks, and managing the young part-timer, Raj, who was still learning the ropes. Every now and then, between orders, she'd add a line or two to her notebook, fragments of verses that popped into her head like bubbles rising to the surface. The cafe's walls were lined with photos of musicians who had performed during their weekly open mic nights. Maya knew each story by heart. The local bands that got their start on their small stage, solo artists who went on to record their own albums. She'd help set up the sound equipment every Thursday, watch from behind the counter as others lived out the dream she kept close to her chest. "When are you going to get up there?" Raj asked during a quiet moment, nodding toward the stage. "I've heard you singing in the storage room when you think nobody's around." His question caught her off guard, making her almost drop the mug she was drying. The storage room and a stage are two very different things, Maya replied, forcing a laugh. But her eyes lingered on the stage, its empty mic stand seeming to wait expectantly. The truth was, she had enough songs to fill several notebooks, melodies that played endlessly in her head while she steamed milk and rang up orders. Later that afternoon, during her break, Maya sat at one of the corner tables, adding the finishing touches to her latest song. It was about the people she saw every day. The tired businessman who ordered extra shots of espresso, the art student who sketched in her journal for hours, the elderly couple who shared a muffin every Sunday morning. Their stories flowed through her music, turning ordinary moments into something magical. Aunt Rose watched her from across the room, a knowing smile on her face. She had seen many dreams take flight in this cafe, and she recognized that same spark in Maya's eyes. The young woman just needed a little push, a moment of courage to share her gift with the world. But for now, Maya remained behind her counter, crafting drinks and quietly crafting melodies, unaware that her own story was about to take an unexpected turn. Seattle's infamous rain came down in sheets that morning, sending people rushing into the acoustic bean like leaves blown by the wind. Maya had just finished restocking the pastry case when the door burst open, bringing in a gust of wet air and a man clutching a leather messenger bag over his head. He shook off the rain at the entrance, his expensive shoes squeaking against the hardwood floor. Unlike the regular customers with their familiar faces and predictable orders, this man carried himself differently. someone used to being in sleek recording studios rather than cozy cafes. "Could I get an Americano, please?" "Extra shot," he said, running a hand through his rain-dampened hair. His phone buzzed constantly as he waited, but he ignored it, instead watching Maya work with unexpected interest. Maya moved through her usual rhythm, grinding fresh beans and preparing his drink. Without realizing it, she started humming the melody that had kept her company during her morning commute, a new tune on rainy days and unexpected meetings. Her voice was soft, barely audible over the espresso machine's hiss, but the man's attention sharpened. "That's an interesting melody," he said, leaning against the counter. "I haven't heard it before. Who's it by?" Maya nearly dropped the cup she was holding. "Oh, it's nothing. Just something stuck in my head." She quickly slid his Americano across the counter, hoping he wouldn't ask more questions. But the man, who introduced himself as Dev, wasn't letting it go. "I've been in the music industry for 15 years, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "I know an original composition when I hear one." The morning rush chose that moment to surge, saving Maya from having to respond. She threw herself into taking orders and making drinks, but she could feel Dev's eyes following her as she worked. He settled at a corner table with his laptop, occasionally making notes on his phone. During a brief lull, Raj nudged Maya. "That guy hasn't stopped watching you," he whispered. "Kind of weird, right?" "Maybe he's just really into coffee," Maya joked, but her hands trembled slightly as she loaded the dishwasher. The tune she'd been humming earlier kept playing in her head, louder now, as if demanding to be heard. The rain continued well into the afternoon, keeping the cafe busier than usual. Maya noticed Dev talking with Aunt Rose, their heads bent together in what looked like an intense conversation. Her stomach did a nervous flip when Aunt Rose glanced her way with that familiar twinkle in her eye, the one that usually meant she was up to something. As the day wound down and customers thinned out, Dev approached the counter again. "Your boss told me about the open McNights," he said, pulling out a business card. "But I'm more interested in the songs you write. The one you were humming earlier, it has potential." Maya stared at the card in his outstretched hand. Rising Sun Records was printed in simple black letters, along with Dev's full name, Dev Patel, music producer. I mean, they're just little tunes," Maya stammered, her heart racing. "Nothing professional." Dev smiled, placing the card on the counter. "Sometimes the best songs start as little tunes. I've got a new artist who needs strong, original material. From what I heard today, even just that snippet, you might be exactly what we're looking for." Before Maya could respond, a group of high school students came in, ordering complicated frozen drinks with extra whipped cream. By the time she finished serving them, Dev had packed up his laptop and was heading toward the door. "Think about it," he called over his shoulder. "I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe you could share more of your little tunes." After he left, Maya picked up the business card with shaking fingers. Raj and Aunt Rose were both watching her with huge grins on their faces. "See?" Aunt Rose said softly. "I always told you magic happens in this cafe. You just have to be ready for it when it comes." Maya slipped the card into her notebook, right next to her latest lyrics. The melodies in her head seemed to grow louder, no longer content to stay hidden behind the counter of the acoustic bean. For the first time, they felt less like distant dreams and more like possibilities waiting to unfold. The cafe always felt different after closing time. As Maya wiped down the last table, the setting sun painted golden streaks across the empty chairs. She glanced at the old piano in the corner, a faithful companion that had witnessed countless performances during open mic nights. Tonight, though, it seemed to call to her more strongly than usual. Dev's business card sat in her notebook like a key to a door she'd never dared to open. All day, her mind had wandered to their conversation, to the possibility he'd seen in her simple morning melody. Now, in the quiet of the empty cafe, she felt brave enough to do something she'd only done a handful of times before. Maya checked the door was locked, drew the blinds, and walked over to the piano. The keys were slightly worn, carrying memories of all the musicians who'd played them before. She ran her fingers over them lightly, not yet pressing down, just feeling their smooth surface beneath her fingertips. Just one song, she whispered to herself. Nobody's here to hear it anyway. Her fingers found the opening notes of the tune she'd been working on for weeks. It was a song on ordinary moments becoming extraordinary, about morning light through windows, about the stories hidden in people's coffee orders, about dreams tucked away in notebook pages. As she played, Maya let herself get lost in the music. Her voice, usually kept to a whisper, grew stronger with each verse. She closed her eyes, forgetting about the empty cafe around her, forgetting about her fears and doubts. In that moment, she was just a girl and her song. Some songs need to be heard by more than just empty rooms. Maya's hands crashed onto the keys in surprise. Dev stood near the door, his forgotten laptop tucked under his arm. She hadn't heard him come in over the sound of her playing. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, standing up so quickly she almost knocked over the piano bench. "We're closed, I didn't." "Don't apologize," Dev said, walking closer. "That song. It's even better than I imagined from the little bit I heard this morning. Did you write it yourself?" Maya nodded, her heart still racing from the shock of being discovered. "It's just something I've been working on. Nothing special." "Nothing special." Dev shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. Do you know what I hear in that song? Truth. Authenticity. The kind of emotional honesty that artists spend years trying to capture." He pulled out his phone. "Would you mind playing it again? Just pretend I'm not here. I'd like to record it, if that's okay." Maya's first instinct was to refuse, to run back behind the safety of her counter. But something made her sit back down at the piano instead. Maybe it was the way the last rays of sunlight warmed the room, or the gentle encouragement in Dev's eyes, or maybe it was just time for her songs to find their way out into the world. She started playing again, more nervously this time, but as the music flowed, she found herself getting lost in it once more. The song felt different with someone else listening, more real somehow, as if it had been waiting for this moment to truly come alive. When the last note faded away, the cafe was silent for a long moment. Maya kept her eyes on the keys, afraid to look up and see Dev's reaction. "I have an artist," Dev finally said, his voice quiet but intense. "She's talented, but she's been looking for songs with depth, with heart. Songs exactly like this one. Would you consider letting her record it?" Maya's head snapped up. "Record it? Like, for real?" "For real," Dev smiled. "And maybe some of your other songs too. I'm guessing that notebook of yours isn't filled with just grocery lists." Just then, they heard keys jingling at the front door. Aunt Rose walked in, stopping short when she saw them at the piano. "I forgot she started, then smiled knowingly. "Finally letting someone hear your music, dear." Maya looked between Aunt Rose and Dev, feeling like she was standing on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. Her songs, which had lived so long in the margins of her life, were asking to take center stage. "Maybe it's time," she said softly, surprising herself with how right the words felt. Morning light streamed through Maya's apartment window as she stared at her phone, Dev's message glowing on the screen. Studio session at 2 p.m. Ready to make some magic. Her fingers hovered over the keys, uncertainty gnawing at her stomach. The past week had been a whirlwind. After that evening at the piano, everything had started moving so fast. Dev had introduced her to Lily, the artist he'd mentioned. A talented singer with a voice that could make even the simplest lyrics sound like poetry. They had clicked instantly, spending hours going through Maya's songs. But now, sitting on her worn couch surrounded by scattered music sheets, reality was sinking in. The morning shift at the cafe started in an hour, and after that, she'd head to her first real recording session. The thought made her hands shake slightly as she picked up her coffee mug. At the cafe, Raj noticed her nervousness right away. "You look like you've had about 10 shots of espresso," he said, watching her nearly drop a cup for the third time that morning. "Just one, actually." Maya tried to laugh it off, but her voice wavered. "Hey, do you think you could handle the afternoon rush today? I need to go somewhere." Before Raj could answer, Aunt Rose appeared beside them. "Of course he can," she said firmly. "And don't worry about tomorrow either. I've already adjusted the schedule." Maya blinked in surprise. "But tomorrow's Saturday, our busiest day. I can't just." "You can, and you will," Aunt Rose interrupted, her eyes twinkling. "This cafe has been here for 30 years. It'll survive without you for a few afternoons. Some things are worth taking a chance on." The morning passed in a blur of coffee orders and nervous energy. During quiet moments, Maya found herself humming her songs, mentally preparing for the session ahead. Each time the door chimed, her heart jumped, thinking about how in just a few hours she'd be walking into a real recording studio. "What if I'm not good enough?" she whispered to Aunt Rose during her break. "What if this is all a huge mistake?" The older woman sat down across from her, pushing a fresh cup of tea her way. "Let me tell you something," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "When I first opened this cafe, everyone told me I was crazy. Said I didn't have enough experience, that I'd fail within a year. But you know what? Sometimes the biggest mistake is not taking the chance at all." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup, letting Aunt Rose's words sink in. "But the cafe needs me." "The cafe needs you to be happy," Aunt Rose corrected. "To follow your dreams. Besides," she added with a mischievous smile, "I didn't spend all those years pretending not to hear you singing in the storage room just to have you give up now." The afternoon came too quickly. Maya changed out of her coffee-stained work shirt into the nice blouse she brought from home, her notebook clutched tightly to her chest like a shield. As she headed for the door, her regular customers called out encouragement. Word had spread fast in their tight-knit community. "Show them what you've got, dear," called Mrs. Lee from her usual corner table. "We'll want autographed copies of your first album," Mr. Kumar added with a warm smile. Standing at the bus stop, Maya took one last look at the acoustic bean. The familiar sign swayed gently in the breeze, and through the window, she could see Raj managing the counter with newfound confidence. Aunt Rose stood in the doorway, giving her a thumbs up. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Dev. "Studio's ready. Lily's excited to start working on your songs. This is going to be great." Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her notebook in her hands. Inside were all her dreams, carefully written between coffee stains and hastily scribbled order notes. Maybe Aunt Rose was right. Maybe some chances were worth taking, even if they scared you. As the bus approached, Maya straightened her shoulders. She was still the same girl who served coffee and wrote songs in secret, but now she was also something else. A songwriter about to take her first step into a bigger world. The melodies in her head seemed to hum with anticipation, ready to finally break free. The recording studio felt like another world compared to the cozy comfort of the acoustic bean. Maya sat on a sleek leather couch, watching through the glass as Lily recorded another take of her song. The melody that had once existed only in her head now filled the room through professional speakers, transformed but somehow still carrying the heart of those quiet moments behind the cafe counter. "Let's take it from the second verse again," Dev's voice came through the intercom. He sat at the mixing board, his fingers moving across countless buttons and sliders with practiced ease. Maya marveled at how different her simple tune sounded now, layered with instruments and production elements she'd never imagined. Lily's voice soared through the chorus, the part Maya had written thinking about sunrise through the cafe windows. "You've got a gift for storytelling through music," Lily had told her during their first meeting. These lyrics, They make you feel like you're right there in the moment. Between takes, Maya's phone buzzed with messages from the cafe. Raj sent her pictures of perfectly crafted lats, proud of holding down the fort. Aunt Rose checked in with encouraging words and updates about their regular customers, all of them asking about her music. How about we try something new with a bridge? Dev suggested during a break. Maya, what if we added a piano part here? The same way you played it that night in the cafe. Maya's heart jumped. Playing alone after hours was one thing, but recording. Oh, I don't know. I'm not really a professional pianist. Neither were half the legendary musicians when they started. Dev smiled. Come on, show us what you've got. Before she knew it, Maya found herself sitting at a grand piano worth more than her yearly salary. Her hands shook slightly as she positioned them over the keys, but when she started playing, something magical happened. The familiar melody flowed from her fingers, and for a moment, she was back in the quiet cafe, playing just for herself. That's it. Dev's excited voice broke through her concentration. That's exactly what this song needed. Raw, honest, real. Days turned into weeks, and Maya fell into a new rhythm. Mornings at the cafe, afternoons in the studio. Her psalms were coming to life one by one, each telling its own story. There was the up-tempo piece inspired by the morning rush, the ballad about chasing dreams that she'd written during slow afternoon shifts, and even a quirky tune about the cafe's eccentric regulars. But juggling both worlds wasn't easy. Some days, she'd arrive at the studio with coffee stains on her sleeve and lyrics scribbled on paper napkins. Other days, she'd nearly fall asleep standing at the espresso machine, tired from late-night recording sessions. You look exhausted, dear, Aunt Rose said one morning, pressing a fresh muffin into her hands. Are you sure you're not taking on too much? Maya took a grateful bite of the muffin. I'm okay. It's just, everything's happening so fast. Sometimes I worry I'm letting everyone down. The cafe, Dev, Lily. The only person you need to worry about letting down is yourself, Aunt Rose said firmly. And from where I'm standing, you're doing anything but that. That afternoon in the studio, something shifted. Maybe it was Aunt Rose's words, or maybe it was just time. But as Maya sat at the piano to record another take, she felt her confidence growing. The notes flowed more naturally, and her voice, when she sang the backing vocals, carried a new strength. There's something different about today, Lily observed during a break. You seem more yourself. Maya thought about it, running her fingers along the piano keys. I think I'm finally starting to believe I belong here, she said softly. That maybe I can be both, the girl who makes perfect lats and the one who writes songs. Dev, who'd been listening, smiled from his spot at the mixing board. That's exactly why your songs connect with people. They're about real life, real moments, real dreams. Speaking of which, he paused, looking excited. The first single is almost ready for release. How do you feel about hearing it on the radio? Maya's heart skipped a beat. The idea of her music, born in quiet moments between coffee orders, reaching people's ears across the airwaves felt surreal. But sitting there in the studio, the familiar scent of coffee still clinging to her clothes, she realized that maybe the best dreams are the ones that don't make you choose between who you are and who you want to be. The radio played softly in the acoustic bean as Maya wiped down tables, trying to keep her hands busy. Any minute now, her song, the one about chasing dreams and morning light, would play for the first time. Lily's voice sharing their creation with the world. The thought made her stomach do backflips. But something else weighed on her mind. Earlier that morning, she'd found Aunt Rose sitting alone in the dark cafe, staring at a pile of bills with worried eyes. The older woman had quickly hidden them away, putting on her usual cheerful smile, but Maya had seen enough to understand. The cafe was struggling. Maybe we should try some new promotional ideas, Raj suggested, noticing her concerned expression. You know, bring in more customers. Before Maya could respond, The radio DJ's voice cut through their conversation. And now, here's the debut single everyone's been talking about, Morning Light by Lily Chen, written by an amazing new songwriter. The familiar opening notes filled the cafe. Maya froze, cloth in hand, as her words and melody floated through the speakers. Regular customers stopped their conversations, turning to look at her with proud smiles. Mr. Kumar raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. But the magical moment was interrupted by Aunt Rose's sudden coughing fit from the back office. Maya rushed to check on her, finding the older woman looking pale and tired. "It's nothing, dear," Aunt Rose waved off her concern. "Just a bit under the weather. Your song sounds beautiful on the radio." Maya wasn't convinced. "You should go home and rest. I can handle things here." "Can't do that." Aunt Rose shook her head. "We have the health inspector coming tomorrow, and the repairman needs to look at the espresso machine, and—" Her voice trailed off as another coughing fit took over. Maya helped her to a chair, worry gnawing at her heart. The cafe's problems suddenly seemed much bigger than just slow business. That evening, as Maya locked up, her phone rang. It was Dev, sounding more excited than she'd ever heard him. "The song is taking off," he exclaimed. "Radio stations across the country are picking it up. Lily's team wants to start a promotional tour, and they want you to come along as the songwriter. 6 months on the road, writing sessions with other artists. This could be huge for your career." Maya's hand tightened on the phone. 6 months ago, this would have been everything she'd dreamed of. But now, I need some time to think about it," she said quietly. "Think about it?" "Maya, opportunities like this don't come along every day. The tour starts next week. We need your answer by tomorrow." After hanging up, Maya sat at the cafe piano in the dark. Her fingers found the keys of a new melody, something sadder, about difficult choices and divided hearts. The cafe's familiar shadows surrounded her like old friends, and she could almost hear the echoes of countless conversations, laughter, and songs that had filled this space over the years. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Raj. "Did you see the comments on the radio station's website? People love your song. Even better, someone posted about it being written in our cafe. We've got people asking if you still work here." Maya sat up straighter, an idea beginning to form. She quickly texted back, "Don't respond yet. I need to check something." Opening her laptop, she began researching frantically. Music venues, local artist communities, cafe renovation costs. As the night grew deeper, her notes filled page after page. The new melody on the piano evolved, transforming from a sad song about choices into something more hopeful. Around midnight, her phone lit up with another call. Lily this time. "Dev told me about the tour," Lily said gently. "I know it's a lot to ask, especially with everything at the cafe." "Actually," Maya interrupted, her heart racing with the possibility of what she was about to suggest. "What if we did something different? Something that could help both the cafe and the music." She took a deep breath, looking around the dark cafe that had been her home for so long. "I have an idea, but I'm going to need your help. All of you." 3 months later, the acoustic bean hummed with an energy it hadn't known in years. String lights twinkled overhead as people packed into every corner of the newly renovated space. The old piano still stood in its familiar spot, but now it was joined by a proper sound system and a real stage where a young guitarist was finishing her set. Maya watched from behind the new, extended counter, smiling as she remembered the day she presented her wild idea to everyone. Instead of going on tour, she proposed transforming the cafe into a proper music venue, keeping its daytime charm while hosting evening performances by both established and upcoming artists. "I still can't believe you gave up a national tour for this," Dev said, appearing beside her with his usual cup of Americano. He'd been skeptical at first, but after seeing her business plan and the cafe's potential, he become one of their biggest supporters. I didn't give up anything, Maya replied, nodding toward the coming soon poster featuring Lily. The tour's still happening. It's just coming here instead. One special night in each city, and we're the first stop. The renovation hadn't been easy. They'd spent weeks updating the space while keeping the cafe's cozy feel. Regular customers pitched in. Mr. Kumar helped with the accounting, and his daughter designed their new website. Even Dev's music industry connections proved invaluable, bringing in equipment and expertise. Aunt Rose, now recovered from her illness, worked the coffee machine with renewed energy. Who knew retirement would look like this? She laughed, serving drinks to a group of music enthusiasts who'd traveled from across the city for tonight's open mic. The cafe's new format had surprised everyone with its success. During the day, it still served the best coffee in town, but now aspiring musicians worked as baristas, earning steady income while pursuing their dreams. Every evening, the space transformed into an intimate music venue, featuring a mix of local talent and established artists. "You're up next," Raj reminded Maya, adjusting the sound equipment. He discovered a talent for audio engineering and now managed their evening events with professional skill. Maya nodded, her heart doing its familiar flutter. These days, she performed regularly, sharing new songs born from the cafe's evolution. Tonight's song was special, a tribute to Aunt Rose and all the dreamers who'd found their home at the Acoustic Bean. As she walked to the stage, she caught snippets of conversations from the crowd. A young woman telling her friend of the record deal she'd signed after being discovered during last week's open mic. A music blogger describing the cafe as the city's hottest new cultural hub. Regular morning customers who'd started staying late, discovering their love for live music. The spotlight felt warm as Maya sat at her piano. 3 months ago, she'd thought she had to choose between her two worlds. Instead, she found a way to blend them into something better than she'd imagined. This next song, she said into the microphone, is called Home Ground. It's about finding your place in the world, even if it's not where you expected it to be. Her fingers found the keys, and the melody rose. A song about coffee steam and music dreams, about taking chances and keeping faith. About how sometimes the best future isn't the one you planned, but the one you build from the pieces of everything you love. Lily's voice joined hers for the chorus, a surprise appearance that sent excited whispers through the crowd. Their voices blended in the familiar space, singing about transformation and staying true to your roots. As the song ended, Maya looked out at the packed cafe, at the dreamers and the doers, the morning regulars and the evening music lovers, all finding their place in this special corner of the world. Aunt Rose wiped happy tears from her eyes, while Dev nodded approvingly from his spot near the counter. The applause washed over her like a warm wave, but it was the genuine smiles and the feeling of rightness that told her she'd made the correct choice. The Acoustic Bean had become more than just a cafe or a music venue. It was a place where dreams could take root and grow, nourished by coffee, music, and community. Maya's notebook still sat behind the counter, but now its pages filled with more than just songs. They held the stories of everyone who passed through their doors, each adding their own verse to the ongoing melody. In the end, she hadn't just written her own story. She'd helped create a space where others could write theirs too.